Whedon's favorite daughter. She produced, she appeared in Animal House, she appeared and was a producer in the Blues Brothers. Her husband was a guy by the name of John Belushi. Have you guys heard of him? Married to him for 6 years. She's going to do a little show tonight. She's got some very, very famous people with her as well. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm Joliet welcome for Judy Belushi.
These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. Oh, these are the best days of my life.
Hi, everyone. John Schneider here from the Saturday Night Network, coming to you today with heavy hearts as we say goodbye to Judy Belushi Pisano, somebody who was a very powerful figure in the SNL community, fandom, somebody that was a part of the original days of Saturday Night Live, and the wife of John Belushi, one of the original cast members at the show, somebody who I myself have gotten to speak to on the podcast, and somebody who was very close to James Stevens, who is here today to talk about his relationship with Judy Belushi. So James, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, John. I think first and foremost, our hearts are full and we're really thinking of Judy's family, Judy's friends during this time. For anybody who knew Judy at any point, to know her was to love her. She was extremely kind, extremely giving, funny in her own right, and somebody that, as you said, John, we were fortunate enough to really have the opportunity to call a friend here for a number of years. And yeah, we're going to miss her.
Absolutely. When we launched our show, SNL Stories, which is an interview podcast that we do here, one of the ideas that James and I had was to talk to people who don't always have a voice. You know, it's very, popular to book the most celebrated cast member for a show, but what about the people who were at Saturday Night Live who haven't done so many interviews and talked about their experience? And the first person that James said that he wanted to have on the show was Judy Belushi, somebody who was there for the original days of the show that can talk about her experience. And what a blessing it was to get to hear from her. Truly one of the most fascinating experiences, and such a privilege, James. So truly thank you for bringing that interview to us back in November of 2021.
Well, it was an honor to visit with her, as it was a couple of the times that we were fortunate enough to interact. That opening that you heard at the beginning, at the top of our episode here, was from the Blues Brothers Con, the inaugural Blues Brothers Con from Joliet, Illinois, in August of 2022. Judy was there. She took the stage to perform some of her music that she composed. There's just an amazing, delightful, it will make you smile piece of music that she shares with us on the interview podcast coming up here shortly, that was first, I think, publicly introduced to the world through the end credit roll of the Belushi documentary that she was a part of helping to produce.
It's like John Belushi's always been this larger than life figure for anyone who's been an SNL fan, but Judy was just as big of a figure, and you see that through the stories, that she is as equal part of the stories of the original days of Saturday Night Live. And that's truly what I took from that interview, was like, she was, she's not just the wife of John Belushi. It was really Judy and John. And I loved getting to hear that from her and all of the stories. So this was, like I said, one of the great privileges of podcasting about Saturday Night Live. And this is something that we did record all the way back in November of 2021. So our first episode ever of SNL Stories. James, anything else you would like to say before we replay the interview for anyone who hasn't gotten a chance to see it?
I think you just said it beautifully, John. Just to say, here we are hoping to continue to shine a light on Judy's legacy, the same way that she has been championing and honoring John's since his passing in '82. Judy, we miss you. We love you. Rest in peace.
Yes, welcome everybody to the first edition of our new podcast on the SNL network, and that is SNL Stories. This is something that we have been working on for a while, a chance to hear stories from people who have been involved with Saturday Night Live through the decades and through the history of the show, and I cannot wait to get to talk to all of our very fun guests on SNL Stories. And joining us as a regular co-host on SNL Stories is the great James Stevens. James, how are you?
I could not be better. We are going to be hanging with Judy tonight, so I'm very, very excited.
Yes, I'm so thrilled to introduce our first guest. But just before we do that, we have one other person co-hosting the show with us tonight, and it is the great Andy Hoagland from SNL in Review and Entertainment Weekly. Andy, how are you?
John, I am doing so well, and it is a true privilege and an honor to be part of this episode and to be here with Judy. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Andy. And joining us, I'm so thrilled to get to talk to her. It's been something I've been really looking forward to for several days now once we found out that she would be joining us. It is the great Judy Belushi Pisano joining us, somebody who has been very well connected to Saturday Night Live since the beginning of the show. So Judy, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I'm very happy to be here. It's just an amazing phenomenon to be part of this experience. The Saturday Night Live world.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to have you. I know that, obviously you were around at the creation of the show, so it's just so cool to hear some stories from you. And that's really what this show is. We're going to get to ask you some questions, get to hear some stories about your life and your experience with Saturday Night Live. And we're also probably going to take some questions. So we sent out a link to all of our patrons, patreon.com/the SNL network, if you want to join us. And we'll have some patrons probably join us later on in the show to ask some questions to Judy. So let's start off our show for tonight. And James, let me send it over to you. Where do you want to start our conversation with Judy?
Well, maybe actually kind of going backwards in time. Really one of the most recent things was this amazing documentary that came out that Judy was involved in, but R.J. Cutler's Belushi from just last year, 2020. It was on Showtime originally. And one of my first kind of interaction with you, Judy, was to tell you, I'm sure as you hopefully remember, how moved I was by the film, but also how much I loved the song in the credits there at the end, The Best Days, you singing it and you, your penned by you, authored by you, just a really, really beautiful way to end the film, as the credits roll, and to just hear that in a very uplifting way.
Yeah, thank you. It was a surprise to me that they used it. I wanted to sing it for RJ just because we were doing these interviews, and I was struggling a little with it, in that I kind of, I didn't want to have to go through the process. And I didn't want to be resisting consciously, but I knew I was subconsciously. And I said, I just want to play this song because this is sort of like my autobiography, and it's where I am now, and maybe it'll explain something for you. So I played it for him, and they recorded it, which I didn't even think about really until I saw it in the show. I said, oh, they did record it. But
and Judy, sorry, go ahead, James. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, and if you're not one of those people who, folks that are listening in that stay to the very end and watch all the credits like this crazy guy, right, please be encouraged to do so, because it's a real treat for sure. John,
I'll tell you what, if you have, I can sing it for you at the end if you have if you want me to, if you remember.
That would be great. That would be awesome.
But we will not forget.
Yeah, exactly. So Judy, I do have to ask, going off of James's question, obviously music has been a huge part of your life. We got to see John Belushi on SNL be so musically involved between the Blues Brothers and Joe Cocker and all that stuff. So can you just give us your background? How did you get so involved in music and your interest in that type of art form?
Well, for me, it's, started with my family at home. My dad was a big, he liked to listen to classical music, really. But on Saturdays, he'd give us a break and we would listen to swing and Sinatra and Benny Goodman and it's just this array of Judy Holliday, and I really that was such a nice break. I loved it, and when their friends got together, they would they had a friend who played piano, and singing was big, and that kind of involvement was big for me. But I really didn't get into music myself until as an adult. I had learned things along the way, and in fact, I've played bass and drums with people in the sort of fun bands we did. John and I had a band with Peter Ackroyd we called the Stink Band because we sang.
Right. It's cool.
That's awesome.
John played drums and Peter, there were Peter's songs and he played guitar, and we would get a different bass player for every show. We did a couple. We did one with our bass player was James Taylor one time, and Duck Dunn, and Tom Davis from the writer from Saturday Night Live did it with us once, and it was a lot of fun. But so I've always been interested, but a little more in the background. When John and Dan got into the Blues Brothers, I was involved from the beginning with, going to see the different people as we considered new musicians and all that. And I just felt so privileged. I remember one New Year's Eve, a friend called and I said, I was playing, we had a musical instrument set up in the garage for the party. And I said, yeah, but, I'm playing drums with Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper. So I can't believe it. I thought it'd be funny. I should have pictures of me playing the people I played with, because it's really kind of meaningless. It means something to me, but Keith Richards and lots of people. So
Quite
anyway,
cool.
I have enjoyed it. I do enjoy it. I love it. I somehow got, I took piano lessons as an adult. And I learned to play for myself. And then I all of a sudden got on the ukulele, and it was like I'd struggled with guitar. And suddenly, without those 2 extra strings, I played the baritone, which is tuned the same as the guitar. And I started writing songs. And that's, sort of my new passion.
That's amazing.
That's where I'm
Andy?
Well, when James brought up the documentary, which again I thought was excellent, it reminded me that when I watched it, some of the portions, Judy, that I was most drawn to were the early moments, that really spotlighted on your initial relationship with John and growing up with him. Like that's the prequel or origin story that I want to see. I don't care about how Han Solo got his hat or whatever. I love this idea of just John Belushi being a human being, just being a guy trying to figure it out like everyone else in the universe, right? So I was wondering if you could speak to, as someone who was there, watching him develop his comedy chops or be in a rock and roll band, when could you tell, okay, this isn't just like a hobby of a guy with a lot of energy. Like this is going to turn into something.
Well, for listeners who don't know, John and I met in high school. He was when we started dating, he was a senior and I was a sophomore. I was 15 going on 16. He was 17 going on 18, and that's a song. And
Sound of Music.
I was thinking that was a really old reference. Yeah. So I did see him early, and he played in a band in high school. He was doing comedy on what we call the varsity show, or the variety show. We call it. It was a varsity show, a talent show. He would do monologues, and he was a football player, so he was pretty well rounded there. And I really fell hard for him, and he did a play, "We're No Angels," when he was a senior, and it's about 3 convicts who escape in some islands, a South Pacific island. They're convicts, and they escape, and they end up in some house pretending to be help, and it's a comedy, kind of an old-fashioned comedy. But it was he was so good in it. I mean, I think it's one of those things where everyone watching in a high school, sometimes there's always some kid, they say that kid's going to make it. Half the time they don't, maybe more than half the time. But that was a moment where everyone just thought he's really talented. And then he got into summer stock, and from summer stock went to Second City. Well, a little lag time there as he was in college. But when he went off to college, he said, "You should probably break up with me because I'm going to be an actor and I'll probably never make any money and you'll probably have to support us." I kind of went, yeah, okay. Okay. I kind of thought he would do fine. I did sort of think it's mixed. I kind of thought he was a Sinatra kind of a guy, because that's someone from my growing up who had multi talents and was good. And I thought, yeah, he's kind of like that. You know, maybe he'll make it. And one day when we did see Frank Sinatra perform, it's interesting. Sinatra does this stuff and he kind of goes like, does this thing, and everybody goes, yay! And I said to John, gosh, you have to do a somersault to get that reaction. Like,
that's great. That's so great.
Sorry, John. One follow up on that. I'm just very interested in this idea of, you know, John before John, right? John before Belushi. Like, so it's, you know, your junior year or senior year of high school. Does he come back for like homecoming dances? Like, does he take you to the prom when you're still in high school? He's at Wisconsin. Like, how frequent are you guys talking when he's in college and you're still in high school?
Well, first, when my junior, he went off to his first year in Wisconsin, and he came back a bit. And I actually went up a few times. I would tell my mother I was staying overnight at a girlfriend's and drive up to Wisconsin and drive back. The next year he left Wisconsin, and there was a very new concept, a junior college of DuPage out in the western suburbs of Chicago. And that's where I was, Wheaton. And so he was back home, so to speak, my senior year. And yes, we went to the prom. We went to his prom and we went to my prom. And just the photos are 100 degrees different. And the first one, I'm wearing a yellow dress and my hair's put up, and he's got a yellow corsage and a yellow tux, I think. And we're very stiff. And then the next one, my sister made my dress. I just had my hair pulled back and we were really loose. And it's just the whole picture is like, okay, whole new world. We were moving out of the high school years and into the hippie years. And he was always, if you were on the music side, you know, he had he was a marching band in like 7th grade. And then he started a band in high school and did, you know, they did rock and roll. He was not the singer. They didn't think John sang so well. He got to do songs like, he did a song called Jolly Green Giant, which was based on a commercial for peas or something. Some vegetable company had a Jolly Green Giant.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really bad song. That's the kind of song. It was a novelty song. He got to do things that were, you know, funny. And Louie, because he was the only one who knew the words, except he didn't really know the words. He just made them up, but he had words. And yeah, so I think those times are the best. When he got his in college, when he came back to the College of DuPage, he met two guys, Tino Insana and Steve Bashakis. They were the Mediterranean kids in the school. They all got together, and they were all very funny. And John had been he'd seen something called Compass Players. The Compass Players were a spinoff from Second City. Yes, we'd seen Second City. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. These are old memories. I'm bringing them out.
It's all good. We're loving this. Yeah.
I'll back to say, when he graduated high school, the drama teacher, who'd been very much a mentor to him, gave him, for a graduation present, tickets his wife and John and I all went to Chicago and saw Second City. And it was, you know, we'd never seen anything like it. And as we walked out, John turned to me and said, "This is what I want to do." And when he went to college, he found the Compass Players, which was a smaller group. It wasn't as successful as Second City. Second City was big in Chicago, not nation then, but Chicago. And this place was smaller, and he kind of worked his way in. He collected tickets at the door. I would say why he would hitchhike, you know, a couple hours through the terrible weather to go collect tickets, and he'd earn about $5 maybe if he was lucky. And I'd be like, "Why are you doing this? This is you're not making any money." He said, "I'm not doing it for the money." It's like, duh. So he learned a lot by watching that show. And then he taught his friend Steve and Tino, the parts, and they would begin to improvise for friends. And eventually they started writing their own skits, and they were very, very hippie oriented. There were a lot of drug jokes about pot and marching and being stoned and just real life stuff, and music. In fact, eventually they brought in Tino's father was a maestro. He was the Chicago Symphony's director, and he was from Italy. And he played piano. So he would play the piano for them, which is really a unique art of its own to play with improvisational theater. And he actually was quite good at it, except his references were mostly classical and especially opera. So there were these really hip guys with this music that was quite sophisticated and funny in its own way. And they did a lot of parodies of operas, especially they like to turn them into like a spaghetti Western opera. And it added to the the creativity and their uniqueness.
So Judy, if you're a sophomore when you start dating John, he's a senior. Are you at the same school with Jim Belushi when you're a senior? Is he a freshman? Like, how does that math add up?
That's right. Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Any thoughts on knowing?
He had the in with all the cool girls in the senior class.
Clearly.
Exactly. That's so great.
That's cool.
Judy, I do want to ask you, so for a younger generation who is getting into Saturday Night Live and they go back and they start watching things from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I mean, there's a lot of, we get to see what John Belushi did on SNL, and he was this powerful force, and there's a lot of stories that are being told. But as someone who knew John so intimately, can you tell our audience what John was really like? Like, are there things that we didn't get to see on screen that are more indicative of John's personality that you would be able to tell us about?
Well, I mean, I think his quiet side wasn't represented a lot. I mean, I think he ultimately showed all his sides in all the work he did, but obviously more of it is the big, explosive, funny guy. I mean, he was very well read. He liked history and politics, and he understood it very well. He was fiercely loyal. He enjoyed people. He liked to have people around. He liked to be busy doing things. He loved music. And we always pretty much once we left Second City, we almost always had instruments around and the availability of just to sing or play if there were the right people around. He was a very good athlete. He didn't. Once Saturday Night Live got going, there wasn't a lot of activity with sports. I think golf. We did a little golf. He was a really good couch potato. And
same here. We have that in common, actually. I think.
Yeah.
He could veg up forever, and he had a way of. He was really good at getting you to do things for him, like, could you get that? Get me that ashtray. It would be like this far from him, but you would do it, and it wasn't annoying somehow. Somehow he had this way of making you think you felt good about helping him out. Yeah, I'll get it. But I don't know.
Okay, well, that was great. Thank you. James, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say a follow-up from that was great to hear those things and great question, John. Specifically, I guess, to SNL in those early years, like, is there something that comes to mind as what, John might have said some of his favorite moments was? Was there a character, was there a certain sketch that was just like, man, that was, he was really just jazzed about it?
He was, he was really excited about the Star Trek piece. That one took a couple of weeks. Because they rehearsed it. I mean, they not rehearsed it so much as it took a lot to come together. So it didn't go up the first week, and that happens sometimes. But so there was kind of a lot of anticipation. And I remember a little before, and John was often would hold back in rehearsals, and Michael O'Donoghue, who wrote the piece, came up to me before they didn't said, "Can John do Kirk?" He goes, he hasn't really been doing it, And I said, "Yeah, he can do it." He goes, "Okay." I worked with Michael previous to Saturday Night Live too, so. But it was I don't know. Yeah, for whatever reasons, I think that was a challenge. He really loved doing the samurai. He didn't like repeating characters, so he did that one. I don't know how many times, maybe 7 times or something, and that was unusual for him, or at least to do something willingly.
Yeah, I read once that something about him not wanting to repeat characters, but then between seasons or something, coming back and telling Lorne, or hearing kind of the word on the street, everybody loved it, so I need to keep doing it. Something to that effect.
That's absolutely fascinating. That I was just going to say, that's incredible, because the 70s in SNL was absolutely known for their recurring characters. So to find out that one of the biggest stars of the early days of the show didn't love doing recurring characters, that's just such a great anecdote.
Well, he always wanted to move on and do new things. When he did Second City, then you would do a show. I think he was comfortable with a few months. And when they went on longer, which as long as the audiences was coming in, they kind of wanted to just do it. And he would get antsy. Fortunately, at least with Second City, you do improvisation. You do a set show and then you do the improv. So it kept his interest. As much as I know, Broadway would have been a great thing for him. And I'm sorry he didn't get to do it, because he was so good on stage. But I always wondered how long he would last before I was thinking we better make a short run. But yeah.
Andy, you got something for another question for Judy?
Yeah. So I was at the SNL barricades recently, and when you're there in the kind of sea of teenagers, it's really like the cast members are like members of the Beatles, or they're like global pop stars. So I was wondering for you, someone who's around on the ground floor, when did that first start? Like, obviously the show begins and it's not instantly a phenomenon, but do you remember a moment when, John and you would walk out of 30 Rock and people started recognizing him, or when did fans start kind of circulating around the studio afterwards to meet him?
Yeah. It was, there were always a lot of stars around, but in the beginning, as you may recall, or, since the show, it was a variety show. There was so much going on. You had a guest host, you had the guest band, you had a comedian, and like, even if it was George Carlin, there was another comedian. There were some commercial parodies being done. Tom Schiller was doing films, and not on every show, but every so often. And there were a couple of people doing films, Gary Weiss and Albert Brooks did a film.
Yeah, right.
I think he had like a 15-minute film in one of the first shows.
Yeah, he did the first 6 episodes.
And then there was the Muppets. That was another, and then the cast. So it was like there was a real fight for what the show would become. And in fact, I think a lot of the idea that John was combative or problematic, and yes, of course he was sometimes. But I think that in general, what happened was everyone fought for what they wanted and spoke up, and there was a lot of people with different ideas of what should happen. And he really very much thought the show should be about the cast, which I'm sure all the cast members did. But it was so clear to him that that's what the show should be. He was impatient with waiting for that to happen. And in terms of when a change happened, excuse me, I can say there was a time, a specific thing that happened that said, whoa. And I don't know when it was, but I'm pretty sure it was the first year, and I was not there, but John went off with the cast to do a book sign. Okay, so it was when the book came out. And that was, I think, done in the summer of the first year, so probably the beginning of the second year. They had a book, and they went out to promote it, and they was a mall somewhere, not too far. They drove, and but he said they came up an elevator to this area of the mall where people were waiting for them. And when they came up, they just saw a mass of people, and everybody saw them come up and started cheering. And it was a madhouse, apparently. There's a picture of it, and John's signing autographs. He's got his tongue out or something. And it's just all these people. And I remember Gilda also just saying how it was sort of scary for a minute when it seemed out of control. And another time that happened, which was, I also think, the second year, was when we went to New Orleans they did a show live in New Orleans.
Right.
And that was crazy.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of that show?
At Mardi Gras. It was Mardi Gras, and they were working out in the streets, and they had motorcycles to get the cast around from one scene to another. And I remember I watched it from a movie theater, which was about a half a block from the hotel room. And I remember John paid a bell guy, a doorman or somebody, to walk me there. And I was so embarrassed. I said, I can walk. He said, no, you can't. It was just crazy in general. So you can imagine once they put the cast out there, it was somebody actually knocked Gilda down and jumped on her, and it got really wild.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, we've heard crazy stories of that New Orleans trip that they all made. So yeah, thanks for letting us know about that. I am curious, Judy. I mean, I know you get a lot of questions about John. Can you tell me about your relationship with some of the other cast members from the original cast? Did you get close to some of the women in the cast, for example?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Gilda and I were better friends in that of the three cast members because she and John worked together previously, and not only that, we lived around the corner from each other. And Gilda was just very lovable. She was one of the, she's America's sweetheart, I believe they called her when she was on the cover of something or other, one of her first covers. Just kind of, she was a girl woman. She seemed very young, and she vulnerable and funny. We worked together at National Lampoon. We did a radio show. I worked at Lampoon starting in the art department, and then switched to a radio show that Michael O'Donoghue started, and ultimately John became the creative director of that. And
you became associate producer, right?
I was yes. I went from being an engineer, assistant engineer. I never got to be an engineer. I saw it was not my course early on. 2 weeks of wiring little things. I said, I think I got to find another way to go about this. And I was thinking I was going to do electronic art, and this was going to be a big boost for me to learn how to use electronics, but that was not my calling. So I worked my way into being a producer, and it was a lot of fun. So we had John, Maddie Simmons, who was the CEO of Lampoon, had asked John to get a cast together to do a new stage show, but then the dates switched or something. And he said, "Oh, we're not going to do this for a couple of months." And John said, "Hey, you told me to hire people. They've given up their apartments. They're moving here. We're supposed to start working next week." He's like, "Oh." So he hired them to do the radio show. So we went from suddenly we had a cast, and we were supposed to only use them except for extra. We had a very small budget to hire other actors for certain parts, and so it was Gilda, Brian Doyle Murray, Billy's brother, Brian Murray, he goes by now, Joe Flaherty, and Harold Ramis. And Harold, of course, wrote Animal House and became a director and lots of things. And Joe worked for Second City TV, as did Brian. And so it was a really nice group of people. And why am I here? Why am I telling you this?
I just wanted to
Night Live. I remember.
I just wanted to ask you if you had a good relationship with any of the other cast members.
Yes, okay, Gilda. Yeah. So we had a lot of fun. And then those days too, Paul Schaefer showed up and he did some music with us. Billy came in, Billy Murray came around and did some stuff. In fact, when everyone got hired for Saturday Night Live, John and Gilda and Ann Beats, who was one of the people working with us as a writer, and Michael O'Donoghue, and I feel like I'm missing someone, but we lost a lot of our talent. Chris Guest and Billy Murray became our go-to guys for the cast. But as for the other women, Lorraine, I still talk to occasionally, and she's, I love her. She's a great gal. And Jane, I think we had a nice relationship actually. She and John didn't, but we did. It was mostly Saturday night after the show. I used to sit with her husband some, commiserate about being a spouse, and she and he would often take off early. They were out of there, but I thought we had a nice relationship. James? And the writers, Ann Beats was one of the original writers, and she and I worked together up till her recent passing. And who else was in there? Well, there were the three writers: Marilyn, Susan Miller, and Rosie Schuster. Ann and I were the closest of that group.
I was actually. Yeah, I was going to circle back to Anne because I knew you wrote some books with her too.
Yeah. Before and during Saturday Night Live, we did I think 2 or 3 before and 1 during. And actually, she did that Saturday Night Live book I mentioned. It was, I don't know what it's called, Saturday Night Live, I think.
Yeah,
and I worked on that with her briefly too. Yeah, but we had various writing projects. Yeah, she was. She was
a great book.
She was. Thank you. She was something.
No, her passing here recently, that was tragic. We're all just pretty.
Well, we're that age now.
Yeah, I mean, like,
kind of like average life expectancy. It's very disturbing.
Well, and speaking of somebody else who's no longer with us, you mentioned Michael O'Donoghue earlier, and I was just curious, because both in the National Lampoon and then on Saturday Night Live, O'Donoghue always there's these stories, and just wondering what you recall really about the working relationship with John and Michael, and your involvement with Michael as well.
Well, so I met Michael when I was working in the art department, and John got me that job, and Michael had this feud going with Tony Hendra, who was the director of Lemmings, which was the show that John was in. So he just didn't like John because of the connection. He didn't like the Lemmings people, kind of, and so he was a little weird. So he was leery of me to begin with too. But he had a book, a special that he was doing, and it called for lots of extra hours. And I think, frankly, I understood the humor of what they were doing. So graphically, it was probably easier to explain things to me and get what you wanted. Some of the other people were much better than I was at, the layout situation, et cetera, because I was new, but they didn't necessarily understand the humor or what was going on or why they were doing it. And so during that time, I became close with Michael. And then with he got the radio show idea. When it came up, I saw it as a way to get my own job, one, as well as to pursue this idea about electronic art. So I asked if I could be this assistant that they needed for the radio guy, technician. And I did. So I got that. And so I worked with him a lot. And, I have to say, he was very difficult in some ways. But when he was in his good mood, which was most of the time I worked with him, he was really great. I mean, he had dark humor for sure. He every day when he'd come in, he you could tell in his eyes if he thought of something clever to say, that he's and it's perfectly worded, and he waits for the right moment and he gives it to you, and it's funny, and it was kind of sweet. One was Janice Hirsch, who worked with me. She was the publicist, our publicist, and she later became a producer herself. Had polio as a kid. So, she had crutches and she walked with a little bit of emotion. And he came in one day and he'd come up with a nickname for her. He wanted to call her Wobbles the Goose, which she liked very much. And he started saying, quack, quack, it's Wobbles the Goose. And if you listen to the radio hour, the end of the shows, he always ends with quack, quack, it's Wobbles the Goose. Why? It's Wobbles the Goose.
I can hear that.
Maybe not so funny, but it was funny to us.
Yeah,
yeah, he was
kind of like an inside joke.
Yeah, inside. Yeah. Now you're on the inside. A bad joke.
Indeed.
Yeah. Andy?
Well, I want to ask one question that's partially inspired by John, some of the comments that we're seeing here. We just had the 40th anniversary of John's last appearance on Saturday Night Live, the infamous Fear musical performance.
Oh.
I was wondering how much were you around at this point, and what did you think about Mr. Jake Blues getting into punk music, and what do you remember about that moment, that episode?
Yeah, well, he this is about this in 80, 81 in there, and he died in 82. He got very into punk music. I wasn't thrilled with it, but it was kind of a fun scene at the same time. And once you got to know certain people that we got to know, band members, and from Fear, and I don't know, we met various people, but they were people. You say, okay, they're not such scary. They're not that different than it's just another way of expressing yourself. And so I really liked those fellows. And when John got them the gig, I thought it was pretty cool. I don't think, no one, you kind of get, didn't realize how different it is what they did, what the punk bands were doing and the dancing and all that. And what happened was the slam dancing, people banging into each other as they danced started, and they bumped into things, and there was sort of an overreaction to it, and then it got wilder, and then they did kind of knock things over as they were doing their wild dancing. So didn't know that was going to happen. To be honest, John was an anarchist. he loved it when things went kind of out of control, and I think he really enjoyed that moment, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we all did.
Indeed. But in terms of like his musical taste and preferences, like, was he like eclectic about it? Like, I always get the impression that it's, he was into rock and roll, and then he became obsessed with the blues, and then near the end of his life became obsessed with punk. Like, would he listen to different genres like during the Blues Brothers phase, or was he like one track mind, like I'm only listening to this kind of music, and then he flips a switch and listens only to guys like Fear or whatever?
Well, I think you got a sense of it that he did focus and go heavy into things. It wasn't necessarily like he wouldn't listen to something else. He probably even would take a break sometimes. But from the time, first of all, his rock and roll days a lot of it was Eric Clapton or some of the heavy metal bands, or the Stones, or bands that were actually playing songs other than originals. They did blues and rhythm and blues. He just didn't realize that was the source. So when he first sort of took the turn to, I love this particular band, and what are you guys doing? And we were in Eugene, Oregon, and it was Curtis Salgado in this band. He was a young guy, about 19 at the time. And we just started talking to him, and he was very passionate about blues, and he and John clicked. And so with Animal House, John really it was fast, and it was a lot of work, and he was trying to be really focused. So his off time, we rented a house, and we were not hanging with the fun things that the kids were doing over at the motel. and Curtis would come by and bring albums and play it, and really gave him a crash course. And so he was very focused, and he would be into it. But for the several years.
Do we still got you, Judy? Hopefully we will get Judy right back. There we go. Oh, there you go.
Someone's calling me, and I know they're going to call again because it's my son.
Okay. Your son just got married too. I saw that, I believe.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Well, congratulations. Yeah.
Amazing. Wish I had a picture to show you.
Yeah. Well, it's still great to hear. Sorry. Did you want to continue with that story?
I don't know. Do I? What do you think? Where was it? What was it? I was saying, I don't know.
You're talking about Animal House and Carlos Delgado.
Curtis
Delgado. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was into that music very much. It sort of slowly morphed into punk. I mean, it seemed slow, and then all of a sudden it was intensely punk. Yeah. We had this sound. We put a sound room into our house because he liked to play music so loud. One, we'd get kicked out, and two, I couldn't take it either. But he could get in there and listen to music for hours. It was kind of like somebody going into a deep steam room, but he would do music room. Yeah, great. I don't know. That was an interesting phase.
But yeah,
he was actually working on a
there?
screenplay about a punk guy.
Oh, really?
So he was very interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think he was kind of moving out of that phase, but he was, to be honest, but it wasn't over.
So were you there the night of the Fear performance and his last appearance on SNL?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't remember anything specific about after. I don't remember. I don't think I understood how much out of control it had become until later. I mean, they were laughing about it and excited, and it was fun. There was great, it was crazy energy in the room and all that. But I guess for some people, they thought it was very destructive. I guess it was. I didn't see that part.
We are going to take.
I didn't do
Yeah,
it.
we're not blaming you, Judy. Don't worry.
Well, right before we jump, John. Right before we jump, can I?
Yeah, of course.
I know I know we're getting ready to go there, but related only to the Dick Ebersol era, I've got to ask, Judy. You were at the very beginning after Lauren left, after Dick first came back. You were hired to be a writer, were you not?
That's right. I was. Yes, I call it my week in television. It was 3 weeks, but it sounds better as my week in television. Because we only did one show, and then there was a writer's strike.
Right.
But I have to tell you that was not Michael Donohue's finest moment. He had come back to be the head writer, and he didn't really want to be there. He felt coming back was a step backwards, and if I'm not mistaken, for the first meeting with the writers, I think that he took some powerful drug of some kind and came in, sort of slammed everybody individually except Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy just said, "Eddie, you're okay," and then had these bags, these like grocery bags he was holding, and he started pulling spray paint cans out of them and said, "And I want you, this place is terrible. It's vacuous. It's meaningless. Paint the walls." And we all went out dutifully and spray painted all these walls like graffiti and whatnot. And NBC was not happy. And they decided we would live with that. They didn't paint them. We had to live with all the shit we did. So it wasn't so I actually went the next day and told him I would give up my position for someone else. And he said, "Oh, no, I'm very happy you're here." So, but fortunately we had a strike, and John found it all very humorous. He couldn't believe I would actually want to be a writer. And I said, I've watched it so long. I feel like I could do it. I'd like to try it. And I said, "Yeah, you were right. Not too much."
We would have loved to see more of that, but I can understand.
And James, I believe that if there wasn't a writer's strike, we would have had a Dan Aykroyd hosted episode of SNL that season.
That's
in season
right.
6 that was canceled. And I think Tom Davis and Al Franken were going to do one as well. So these are like the lost episodes of SNL. We never
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and there's another connection too, I think, right? Judy, wasn't the one episode that you were really credited as a writer? Is that when Chevy came back?
Well, we didn't have a host. And yes,
okay, right.
I think it was 3 people. Chevy, I think Steve Martin.
I believe Al Franken joined Chevy on Update for that episode. And Chevy, there was no official host for that episode. It was Junior Walker
Billy?
and the All-Stars.
Was that when Billy and Chevy had the fight? I don't think so. No, that was in season. That was when Chevy.
Season 3.
Oh, who knows? It's so hard. Yeah. It was wild.
So, Judy, what I would love to do is, and obviously James and Andy, you feel free to interject throughout our conversations with the patrons as well, but I would love to bring in some questions from our patrons for the second half of our conversation.
I'd love to hear what they're wondering.
Yes, of course. Right before they do, I did have one more question for you just before we start that segment of our show. And I just want to know, if John Belushi was still around today, how many times would he have hosted Saturday Night Live? Because
he would have hosted more than anybody.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. I would have Danny's only hosted once, so I didn't know.
He'd be like a puppy, a bad dime. He'd be back every week. No, I don't know, but he did love the show, and I think he went back. He did something. Steve Martin did a special. Maybe it was something to do with Steve, and he dressed like a woman. That's all I can remember. He was singing. He had his breasts. He made the breasts out of. He took 2 nylons, put a croquet ball in each nylon, and tied them behind his neck. So that when
sounds
he moved,
heavy.
It was, but it was very funny looking because he kept anyway. That's all.
Did he ever talk about hosting? Did he ever mention to you like, I'd love to come back and host?
Not really. I'm not. I mean, and no one had. I mean, well, no one left. They were the first to leave.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
obviously it happened. It would have happened.
Yeah, definitely. So that's yeah, it's just something that I know that SNL fans think about all the time, like what if scenarios for sure. So
Yes.
yeah, thanks Judy for that. Okay, so let me bring in some calls from our patrons who have some questions for you. Ike, I see you in the background. Ike, are you ready? Just give me the thumbs up if you're good to come on. Okay, perfect. Let me bring up Ike. Hey Ike, just make sure you unmute yourself when you ask a question to Judy, okay?
Hi, Ike.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, thank
Good.
you.
Ow.
Go
All right,
ahead, Ike.
so
Let me
nice to
lower
meet
your
you.
volume. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Judy. It's no secret that John make SNL the institution that it is today. My question is very quickly, have you seen the show recently? What are your thoughts on it? And you guys touched on it a little earlier. What do you think John would think of SNL today in general?
Well, you know,
Thanks,
I truth be told, I don't watch it live very often, but I have seen it. But I catch things. I mean, I think there's been so much talent come through that show. It's a phenomenon for sure. I mean, it really is, and I think it continues to be really good. It comes and goes, you know, for one's taste, I think. But I know how John would have felt. He would have been really, first of all, you know, he would have felt really proud that it's still going on, and he would have been supportive. I mean, it's not unlike Second City. He was always interested in, you know, going back to see what was happening at Second City, helping the people who were there and or getting to work with them, you know, and he, you know, I'm sure that's how I would have felt about SNL.
Thank you so much, Ike, for the question. Anything else you have for Judy before we let you go?
No, it was a pleasure to talk to you, Judy, and God bless y'all. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
calling.
so much. Thanks, Ike. Appreciate it. Okay, Judy. So before we bring in our next caller, I have a question in the chat. So this is from one of our patrons, Casey. And Casey says, where did the "but no" catchphrase come from? Was that something that John regularly said in his life?
That's a good question. I'm not certain. I think we were throwing it back and forth, and so I'm not sure where it started, but there it ended up, and it worked so well. He made it work so well.
But no.
Yeah, that was a classic. Let me bring in one more from Casey. Casey also asks, what was your and John's relationship with Chevy like? That's always an interesting question people like to wonder.
Yes, people speculate much. Chevy and John worked on Lemmings, the National Lampoon show I've referred to, for better part of 2 years probably. And they really worked well together. They got along pretty well too. I think that I don't remember any real problems during that show. They divided it into one cast stayed behind with Chris Guest and the musician who'd been the main musician on the show originally, and then John and Chevy and other cast members went on the road. So and that all went really well. The cast got along, and they worked. As I say, Chevy and John had a very funny repertoire they could do, and when they hit Saturday Night Live. And as it became a little more combative in that, or competitive, I'd say. And Chevy did jump to fame quickly, and John felt he wasn't able to get the screen. He felt.
We should get Judy back in 1 second. I believe her son might be calling her again, so you have to let her son know that.
If I turn off my phone, will that stop that? Or?
You're good. You're good. So just keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So John felt like Chevy got the news. He was doing the news, and he got the great line, "I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not." So everyone knew his name, and meanwhile, we'd be walking down the street, and people lean out, "Hey, it's the B," which he couldn't have been less happy about. And so yeah, he was jealous. And he didn't, he felt a little like, what happened? How did this happen? And so they had a little contentiousness, but I don't think, and I mean, Chevy has a pretty bad rep, and I guess he deserves it on some hand. I mean, he created it, I guess, but I always, I think he was a really funny guy. He was, you know, he was one of those people who can't stop being funny. They just, that's all they know. That's how they use it. And sometimes it goes awry. And yeah, there you go. I just want to say.
Okay. Well,
this is Chevy now. Yes, Chevy. Yeah. No, I told him what you said. You're a good guy, right?
Okay.
I love it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's going in our best of 2021 special, Judy. So thank you for that.
Yes, that's great.
Yes. All right. Let me bring in one of my favorite people to talk about SNL with. It's Bill Kenny. So Bill has a question for you, Judy. Hey, Bill.
Hey, guys.
Bill.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hello.
Good. Judy, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Big fan of yours. My question is, going back to the beginning of the show, John was famously hired pretty late on after a lot of other people had been.
Yes.
What kind of discussions did you and John have as far as him joining the show? And did he talk to you about, characters he wanted to do, knowing that you were a great comedic mind as well? Did he come to you and talk to you about, things he was thinking about doing on the show?
Well, John always ran through things, and he was he would work on characters or ideas at times, not always. And I've talked a lot about his samurai character and developing that around the house. But and he had begun to do that just out of the blue. He was actually between working for Lemmings and going to Saturday Night Live. And he'd been watching Toshiro Mifune, the Seven Samurai. And he was so transfixed with the whole thing. He was like, if the TV, and he would get really close to it, and he kept getting really close to the TV, so he could really see his face, and he'd be imitating the movements and stuff. And then he was just walking around and guttural, and just like getting some water, he'd get up and he'd start to walk like the samurai, and he had on this robe, and I said, so I got a tie, a hair tie, and we put his hair up like that just because it was so funny. And then he would, do more. And we also had it was a pole for a closet. It was just like, hadn't been put in or something. So I gave it to him, and he started doing this thing. And we had cats jumping out of the way of this and grabbing lamps, and he created this character. So when he got the call to when Saturday Night Live came up to that question, he wasn't interested in doing television. So his first reaction was he didn't want to do. He turned down some things previously, and because he just said, I just don't want to do TV. Like do a guest shot of Mary Tyler Moore. It's like, we liked the show, but it wasn't what he wanted to do. He didn't see it him taking him anywhere. It would just be going to do a job, and he felt like he didn't need to do that at that time. So when he heard Michael O'Donoghue's name and Ann Beats and Dan and Gilda, suddenly he was like, well, wait a minute, what is this show? And then again, famously, he went into his interview with Lorne Michaels and immediately says, I hate television. I've spit all over my television. And that didn't go so well either. So he was asked to audition, which was very insulting because no one else had auditioned from our crowd. And he was angry. He didn't want to do it. And he really wasn't a great auditioner. He really got, I don't know of anything other than Saturday Night Live that he got with an audition. And so he was nervous about it. And I just suggested he do this samurai character. I said, why don't you just go improvise the samurai? And so we packed up his robe and this pole and the tie. And he went in and just improvised and apparently wowed them. I know Tom Schiller was he was there apparently, and Lauren had kept him waiting a bit. So John started doing the samurai apparently before he went in, because there were a lot of people he knew, and he was doing it. And Schiller came in and opened the door and said to Lauren, "Somebody audition this samurai before he kills somebody." And they brought him in, and they liked him. It was. I think partly actually it was kind of because there were so many people who saw it and it went so well. I think Lauren's hand was kind of, played. It was difficult to say no. he was leery of John for, actually good reasons, because John had been a director and, had and an improviser, and he was strong-willed and strong-minded. But of course, we also know all the other sides. That is because he was so passionate about what he did. And I've had this conversation with my brother-in-law recently, because our crowd was very 100% in, and 24 hours a day if it need be. We not like these young kids who, they don't want to work all the time. I mean, in a good way. They see up that their life isn't only about that they want to do their work and then go do these other things. It's like, oh, you can do other things? It's like, oh, I didn't know that. But now I do, and I'm doing other things. And the end.
Can I ask one quick follow-up on Bill's question?
Of course. Yeah.
There's been some writing on the lost projects of John Belushi, and Judy, you mentioned his famous dislike of television, and I think one of the projects was he was considering doing a guest spot on Police Squad. Is that true? Do you remember?
Yes, he actually he shot something. It was a cameo, really, and what it was him. I don't know. It was, I believe, I think the intent was sort of this movie Sunset, the Greta Garbo film Sunset, whatever it is, where William Powell, no, not William Powell, the actor is floating dead in the pool in the beginning.
Oh, Sunset Boulevard. Gloria
Thank
Swanson.
You. Yeah, and that was sort of what it was supposed to be. So he was floating dead in the pool, and so the film disappeared. It was like shot a week or two before he died. And so it's rather ironic. And I think someone put it away, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah.
Maybe someday
Bill,
it'll show up.
Maybe. Bill, anything else for Judy?
It's hard to compare over generations and things like that. And Chris Farley obviously has been compared to John quite a bit. Is there anybody either in the current cast of SNL or comedian that you may be aware of that kind of reminds you of John, or is that just he was such a one of a kind person that's impossible to say?
I definitely have seen people at times that I felt very reminded of for one reason or another. I mean, Jack Black has also been compared, and just because he's a similar type, and he does the music, and he can do humor that's subtle or very big. I thought when Melissa McCarthy did Spicer, I thought she was channeling John. It's just,
that's great.
Yeah,
came out like a bull in a china shop, and didn't stop. And actually, likewise, I felt like there was something about Amy Schumer when I first saw her that was bold and different in a way that John had been. So interestingly, I'm seeing it more in women, apparently.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Chris obviously loved John, and he had the power. He had that power and explosiveness and funny. He didn't have the music side, I guess, but.
I love the McCarthy Spicer take. That's great. Channeling
that's amazing.
John.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Judy.
We'll catch you soon. Thanks. Let's bring in Sarah. Sarah has a question for Judy. So Sarah, I'll bring you up here. Hey, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for this, first of all. So a little context is I love a good party story, and I'm fascinated by, the SNL after parties. So I have to ask, are there any fun SNL after party stories that you'd want to share?
Well, do you realize that there was the after party that SNL would put on? And in the early days, we just went up to the top floor of the building, and, all the hosts the host and all their friends, and the music and all their friends, and anybody who was in town who, could get a ticket was there. But then they became kind of boring. Not boring. They were so big, and they were just so big, I think, is the thing. Anyway, so Danny had noticed that he was looking for a place to rent his keep garage his motorcycle, and he was down in Hudson, Lower Manhattan there somewhere, and saw this empty bar, this old empty bar that was available, and he mentioned it, and we got the idea that maybe we would rent it with him and use it for like a hangout. And it was really, really a dirty old bar, it turned out. But if you didn't go in the bathroom, it wasn't too bad. And, you know, we put in this great jukebox, stocked it with liquor, and just invited people to come down after the party. So that was the after party, the after party. So, you know, somewhere around 2 or 3 people would start to arrive, and we'd usually leave as the sun was coming up. And it was pretty great. I mean, pretty much everyone, you know, who was there came by at some point. It got kind of big too with time. It got a little big, but the way the show went, you'd have, you know, 3 on and then a week off, and it took a while for people to realize where we were. And so mostly it was just people coming from the show, or people walking by, and you know, and I often worked the bar. And it was really pretty interesting because people would want to pay you, and you say, "No, it's okay." They'd be like, "Really?" Yeah, some people just walked in, and I think had a really nice time. Yeah, it was wild. We had instruments again, of course, so there was always music, either the jukebox or live, and by day we would hang out there some, and
that's amazing.
Party town.
I love that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you you calling in. So thanks. Great to talk to you. Okay. That was so fascinating, Judy, to hear about the after parties. I've always wondered myself, like, if there was like any crazy 70s after party stories, because like oftentimes now you'll see like TMZ trying to find out where the SNL after parties are and get the good stories. But it's so interesting to hear how they started in the 70s.
I've been, you know, but it's that thing. It's in a restaurant. It's a very different feel. You know, it was down and dirty. It was fun. It was wild.
Yeah, that's really great.
But you know, it was so wild. I can't tell you one thing about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I appreciate
that we were there. I remember being there. I remember leaving.
For sure. Let me take a question from the chat. So this is from Liv La Raj. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Recollections of the short film West Heaven you made with Rhonda Coolett in 1983 as a tribute to John, aired in season 8, episode 13 with Howard Hessman.
Great question.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first anniversary of John's passing. And Lauren, I approached him and said, I'd like to do a memorial piece. And, you know, when he died, Brian Murray was on the show, and he said something nice before it started, and that was sort of it. So they were open to that idea. And my friend had written this song called West Heaven, Call in West Heaven, where the outlaws never die. They ride into the sunset, no time to say goodbye. But I know your spirit is somewhere running free, and that's good enough for me. So it was longer, of course, and we recorded it, and then I just did a little video, symbolic, a lot of symbolic stuff, a lot of photos of him, and we ran that, and it was kind of nice. They can't find the copy of it anymore. I have copies that aren't so good, so it's sort of lost.
James, you got to work on that for her.
Yeah, no, I'm adding it to my repertoire, but I don't know. I only know that the first verse so far.
Yeah, that's a good one to try and see if we can do something for you, if we could try and find that somewhere. We also have a question from Casey again, who said that he'd heard that John was supposed to do a guest spot on SCTV. Do you know anything about that, or recall that at all?
I can only say that he loved SCTV. In some ways, the thing he would have not given up about Saturday Night Live and loved was the live aspect and just the thrill and the excitement of doing it live. But he did feel that SCTV was doing scenes, and that's more what he was hoping to do. I mean, you know, they really could develop their scenes, and interesting. It was fun. It's great. So I'm sure, I mean, there was talk back and forth about things. I don't recall it ever like he was close to going on or anything like that. I actually was asked to be an art director, which was,
Cool.
I had art directed a book. It's a long way from doing a book to television. But of course, I was willing to do it, but it just sort of disappeared. I don't know what happened. And also, I don't know that I actually would have gone to Toronto when we were just, you know, starting up with Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
Life would be different today.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Okay, it doesn't look like we have anybody else on hold right now. James, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Judy before we wrap up?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it true? Did I hear something about recently, and maybe with the pandemic and COVID, it got interrupted. I can't remember when I heard it, but that you were involved in bringing to the stage perhaps a Blues Brothers musical?
That is something that we would love to do. And I'm hoping that will happen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, could
Cool.
be.
We'll watch out for that one.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I know anything.
Okay, thanks, Judy. And then Andy, what about you? Anything else that you've always wanted to ask Judy, and now's your chance?
Well, I mean, I really appreciate your time, Judy. This has been so great. You know, I keep on thinking about, you know, the what ifs and the lost projects that we never got to see. You know, like people talk about Noble Rot, but beyond that, you know, there's been mentions of, I mean, Ghostbusters is like maybe the most famous one, but like Night Shift and Arthur. Do you know, like, you know, yeah, Spies Like Us. Like, what was, you know, the next couple dockets for John? Do you think, like, was it Spies Like Us, or what do you think is Intercontinental Divide?
Spies Like Us and Ghostbusters, and I think in the opposite order. But yeah, it was supposed to be well, first Danny actually did Dr. Detroit, and John was hoping to do Noble Rot, but then they were trying to put it on hold and switch it around. And I don't know, you know, didn't happen. Whatever, it was at the end. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, he had such a bright future, and so many things that he left undone. But I'll tell you what, he got a hell of a lot done, and made the most. He got the biggest bang for his buck.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If anybody like packed a punch in their life, it definitely was John. From everything we got to see. Yeah, Judy, I just wanted to ask you, how are you doing? Like, I know that you're located. You're in Martha's Vineyard, is it?
I'm on Martha's Vineyard. I have 4 kids. 2 of my girls have properties. We are adjacent properties. One of them and her husband lives here, and the other one is not. And then I have a daughter just off the Cape, and I have a son, as we mentioned, who's in Portland, Oregon, probably coming east soon. And you know, they're a big part of my life, and I'm kind of bowing out of the work stuff I've been doing, and just gonna be doing a little bit of music and working on staying healthy and imagining a lot of wonderful things to come.
Great. We're really glad to hear that. James?
No, that's beautiful. I love Martha's Vineyard area. And, you know, there's just some really beautiful, lovely photos of you know, you and John through the years enjoying the space. And I know for a while you had a gallery there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we did. With one of my daughter who's next door, and she's still an artist and has a nice studio there, and I can walk down and look at her beautiful artwork.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's I just love that. I really, really do.
It's a lovely community.
I know before we go, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. No, I was just going to say before we go, I know before we go, we have to got to go back to you know, teased us with hearing the best days here live with us before we go, right, John?
Yeah.
I do have this over here, but what I'm realizing I should have tuned it.
Well, here, Judy.
I don't have to do it right now. I'll hold it. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, while you're tuning it, let's wrap up. We'll do some plugs, and then we'll finish off on you doing the song. So, James and Andy, so appreciative of you two to join us. So, James, I always ask you, but where can people reach out to you if they want to hear from you?
If you want to hear from me, you should really consider talking to Andy or John because they're way cooler than I am. But I'm not. It's not to say that I don't want to speak to you. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Cool. Would love to chat. Thank you all.
Yeah, and Andy Hoagland, thank you for joining us for our inaugural episode of SNL Stories. So where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, this was such a wonderful treat, Judy, once again. And folks can reach out to me at SNL and Review on Twitter. Toss me a follow, shoot me a DM, whatever. Also, I do the recaps for Saturday Night Live for Entertainment Weekly. So if you were so inclined, you can comment on what I'm writing and disagree and tell me I'm a terrible writer. So have at it.
But if you did that, you would be wrong because Andy
would be deeply wrong, and shame on all of you. But you could do it. You could.
Yeah. You can find me at John Schneider 24 if you want to reach out to me personally, or if you want to find us at the SNL Network on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find us on all the socials. Make sure to subscribe to us on any podcast feed that you have so you get to hear great conversations like this one with Judy, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube so you get to see our beautiful faces as we talk through every single episode we have of Saturday Night Live. And we'll be back this weekend with host Kieran Culkin and musical guest Ed Sheeran. Judy, as we finish up our episode tonight and before you play us out, is there anywhere where people can follow you, any social media that you have that people should check out?
Well, I do have an Instagram account. I'm not very good with the social media. I throw things up every once in a while. I have a Twitter account. I think I use my name. I just do that.
Okay.
I don't do
well,
Facebook.
I think we followed you today. So if you want to find Judy's Instagram, you can check our follows. And
I'll get some followers. I do feel more obligated to post the more followers I get. I didn't really post at all. And then one day I thought, I have a couple hundred followers. Maybe I should post something.
Yeah,
anyway,
we'd love to see anything.
Yeah,
so thank you, Judy.
And what a lovely show you have. Thank you for asking me. And anything else you want?
Well, just thank you again for joining us. Yeah, and on behalf of all the listeners, everybody who called in today, and really all the people in the chat who watched live, and anyone's going to listen after, just really privileged that you guys get to listen to our show and that we get to have great conversations with somebody like Judy. So thank you, Judy, for joining us and giving us so much of your time. And let me have you play us out as we close out our episode today.
And I'll just say, there's a place where it looks, you think it's over, but it's not. It'll slow down, come to a whole nother mood, and then go back. Just so you know, I'll give you you can always edit that out. Yeah, so people often wonder, am I a large woman with a small guitar or a small woman with a large ukulele? And it's the second. It's a little biographical piece. Okay, are you ready? Well, I'm a fast talking, fast walking Midwest kid. Never thought I'd grow up, but I'm glad I finally did. I done good in school, I learned to be cool, and it served me well. I married a rebel, I fought with the devil, and I live to tell. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. There was a time I thought I'd be a virgin all my life. I never thought I would make a wife. When it came round to adultery, never thought that I was sultry. But you know the best one, kiddo. Never thought I'd be a young widow. You cut the deck, you get what you get. You play your best game and you never forget that. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. Well, hello, green eyes. You are my best surprise. Now you and your sisters stand by my side. Times may get rough or we get tougher. We're not the kind to sit and suffer. I got your backs, and that's the facts, because I am your motherfucking mother. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. These These are the best days of my life. I got some sad news. I lost my good friend today. We had so much more to say now. All we said, shared, was in the past. No, that's not really true, and I can prove it to you, 'cause in my heart our love will last forever. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. These are the best days of my life. Oh, I got money in the bank, I got gas in my tank, and I'm driving an electric car. I'm hitting the road, I'm lightening my load. I'm just gonna take along this little acoustic guitar. These are the best days of my life. These are the best days. Oh yeah, these are the best days of my life. Well, thank you all for coming. Please drive home carefully and remember to leave your waitress a tip. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.